Hello, everyone. This is Annalise Harris, founder of Curls on the Block. I'm so excited to introduce today's feature guest, Miss Evette Dionne, and she is coming to you to talk about one of the new endeavors she's been highlighted for. Curls on the Block is definitely excited to support another curl friend out here in Colorado. And this is for a virtual curly weekend. If you didn't know, now you know. We are definitely encouraging everyone to stay curly and definitely stay up to date on what is going on in your local elections. Okay, so this weekend is so timely for every year, actually, but specifically this year, we got an opportunity to really share our voice and be a presence in the nation. So without further ado, I would love to have Yvette be able to share with you a little bit about herself and what she is going to be talking about with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. As you mentioned, my name is Evette Dionne. I am the author of the book sitting behind you, Lifting as We Climb, Black Women's Battle for the Ballot Box, which was released in April. I'm also a journalist, a pop culture critic, and the editor-in-chief of Bitch Media.
Okay, wait. A little light work there. Really important. I know this is legit.
Nothing major, you know.
Okay, sorry, thank you. I just had the gut and curling over here. So I'm sorry. So yes, okay, thank you. Yes, we're getting to know our curl friends locally and really be able to talk to you and kind of get some background from you about where you got this idea, what prompted you to really embark on this major endeavor to track the Black women's, efforts in, voter rights. Obviously, we should all listen to Black women, but
thank you.
Look, people don't always do that. So, but anyway, you're able to highlight and provide that historical context to really demonstrate we've been down for the cause for a minute.
For a long time, for generations now. I always say that I got lucky that I originally wrote this book as an article for Teen Vogue. And from there, like the editor at Teen Vogue asked me to do that article. And then from there, an editor at Viking, which was the publisher who released the book, found out about that article. She already had an idea for a YA book tied or pegged to the centennial of the 19th Amendment. And so she reached out to me about turning that article and adapting it into a book. And as I always say, I was very hesitant at first. I never thought that I would write for a YA audience. But I'm glad that I took the project on, and it's been a wild ride. It took 2 years, but I'm glad we're here now.
Wow. And you know what, I'm so glad you got to even share that. It's a process. And
it's a process.
2 years, I mean, and then such a timely opportunity to keep our young curl friends engaged in this process that they're really seeing in a different way than I have ever seen before. We are used to like the Vote Now campaign.
Right.
We're seeing youth, for the past year, it's almost the end of 2020, but for the past 6 months, we've really seen our youth really getting more engaged in their civic duties and civic responsibilities, and really starting to understand in a better way what their teachers were talking about in 5th and 8th grade, and then even in high school, like when you have to learn the Constitution or you're learning about U.S. history. We're also seeing there are some gaps. And
big time. Yeah, big gaps. I think young people are really engaged because of social media, to be honest. I think the amount of work that when I was coming up you would have to do to find this history is just much more accessible for young people now, and they almost take it as a charge, like a personal call to action for them.
Well, you know what? Could you share just from your research and work, from the article to the book now published, what was shocking for you, or was there anything in particular you want to really relay that's like special in the book that you found interesting?
Yeah, I would say what was shocking to me is just how blatant a lot of the racism was. You know, I know that when we think about any time prior to the 1960s, that so often, you know, people know how blatant it was. Like we've seen people in historical news clip being hosed down with water hoses, for instance, or having food thrown at them. But to see it so blatantly done in this way by women who are now hailed as progressive or revolutionary, or now have statues in Central Park dedicated to them, it was just very shocking to me that they were so open and honest, and they're still revered because they were able to achieve something that excluded Black women. Is like, that's, I mean, that's a whole level of mess. But in terms of what was inspiring to me, or what something that I think is cool, is the fact, you know, I'm very intentional as I move from section to section of the book of talking about the women who died between those periods, like the women who didn't make it to 1920, who didn't make it to 1965, who have died from then until now, because I find it really amazing that so many of these women were fighting for something so much bigger than themselves, something that they knew they may not live to see, and yet they still engaged in the fight. Like sometimes the sacrifice and the violence that you face and the opposition is worth it, even if the gain is made for a generation that comes after yours.
Wow, that's so powerful. And, you know, as we all are really tired and exhausted from a lot of the information spread, uh, fake news, all of those things can become overwhelming. But you know what? We have to keep the long-term goal in our minds, because if we get too overwhelmed, we'll end up not feeling like our work is valuable. And it really, truly is. So you never know, just you fulfilling one part of your passion or duty or civic responsibility can inspire other folks. And you know, it's really important for us to follow our heart, be safe, but also do some research. Like, people have done this before you, so learn what techniques worked, consider what could be amended for our 2020 times. And you know, with technology and just connecting with folks, we have some real opportunity to even carry the baton that has definitely been held. I actually think of like the stick, you know, the fire, not the stick on fire, you know, we're running with that. And just we really have to be mindful that others have gone before us, but we can't get tired. Like, they got tired, but they knew it was for the greater good. And like, I know a lot of people seem to really have conflict on, you know, what we should be doing right now. But I think at the end of the day, if we don't center our opinions and preferences on the most marginalized groups, we really, you know, we're not going to progress as a country. We're going to, you know, really aren't. And it's a very dangerous perspective to be like, you know, it's only about me right now. And it's really not. It's for the progress of the country. And our country influences other countries immensely, and specifically with racism, we definitely had other countries mimic what we did to keep folks down. So, you know, all of the efforts to oppose that and really protest against the oppression and just the inequalities in our nation, we are going to influence other countries as well. And I know we can be influenced too. There's other countries doing amazing work to identify and move their countries forward too. So we can learn and share. So I appreciate you sharing your favorite part, which is really learning, you know, about the women who did make it. Like, and where can we, you know, pick that up, you know, and appreciate the contributions. So if you had any advice, I'm going to go to you being an author. So we talked about the book. I love it. Hopefully people comment because they get a chance to win some copies of the book. I have a
book. Oh, awesome.
Yeah. So whenever they watch it, the first 5 people to comment, they'll get a copy of the book. And But anyways, let's talk about really quick your process as an author and a journalist. Like nowadays, everybody's a journalist, so that's great, right? We can all share our story, but what would you suggest for folks who really want to bring to light and have that research aspect to an issue? You know, what would you suggest, you know, our curl friends do if they're interested in journalism?
Yeah. So what I would say, like, I'm a trained journalist. Like, I went to journalism school, but I don't always think that that is necessary. It was necessary for me in terms of being mentored and making connections and learning the literal skill of journalism. But I don't think it's something that every single person who wants to get into the field has to do. What I would encourage people to do is to train themselves to, you know, journalism for me is a skill. It's something that, you know, it's not context, it's not knowledge. It's literally a tool that if the longer you do it, the better you get at it. Hopefully, if you're applying yourself, the better you become at it. But what you really need is context. And so all good journalists read. I read far more than I write. I have piles of books everywhere in my room and elsewhere. I'm a big reader. I also study other journalists who I really admire. I study their technique. I study what it is about their work that I admire. What are the things about their work that I wish I could improve? And then I try to incorporate that into my own work. And then it's important to learn the history, whatever it is that you're interested in. So whether you want to report about police violence or you want to report about food injustice, whatever it is in your community that you want to focus on, it's important to read up on the history of it. A lot of that history has been obscured, but some of it is in archives. Some of it is in libraries. You can go to the Denver Public Library, and I got this help from librarians who helped me go through archives all over the country to find some of this information. That information is readily available to anyone who wants to go and seek it. So I would just say, like I said, you know, practice the craft if you can. Find other journalists who admire, study their work, read a whole lot, read more than you write or whatever your form of journalism is. Watch more if you're on broadcast journalism, for instance, or if that's your tracker field. And then tap into the resources that are available. There are so many. Librarians are a great resource. Tap into them.
Yes. Look, tap, tap, tap in.
Right.
I love going to the library. Yeah, now even virtually, you can access a lot of these resources. There's something, though, to be said about going into a library. Obviously, with COVID restrictions, we are limited right now. But I remember going into libraries and just getting lost in the library and finding authors who I would never have found if I was just asking for recommendations. My friends didn't know. They were saying but also in particular related to research, man, the librarians, they know their stuff. They're trained to help.
They can help you find the things that you can't find on your own.
Exactly. And we do actually have a question. Someone asked, Dominique Harris, she asks, loved hearing about your favorite part. What was the hardest chapter to write?
The hardest? I would say two. The first is both the first and second chapters. Just anything prior to the Civil War, unless you are a Civil War historian, and I'm not a historian, I'm just a curious journalist. But anything prior to the Civil War is just difficult to find, especially for Black women, many of whom had escaped slavery. They didn't want to be photographed. They weren't sitting down to talk to journalists at that time or other people who were documenting history. They were simply trying to remain free. And so trying to figure out who those women were and the organizations they were a part of and the work that they did was very difficult to kind of excavate that history. The other chapter that was difficult to write for me was the final chapter, which is the epilogue to the book, because I cried writing that entire chapter. I say that all the time because I just realized how much, having written the entire book, how much these Black women had sacrificed, only to end up in the end with us right back in the same place in terms of there being just systematic nationwide assault on voting rights. That was just difficult for me to come to grips with. So that was really difficult for me emotionally.
writing is cathartic in general, and it definitely allows a lot of people to address some of their inner frustrations and, everything. So I can only imagine after reading everything, your difficulty, putting it all together. It's like,
yeah.
And then 2020, we're still here.
We're still here. All those Black women sacrificed, I'm talking about since the 1820s. We ended up back here again. It was difficult for me to process that emotionally.
Wow. And I'm grateful that you did. You persevered and have a beautiful text out that can now be used. People are looking for resources all the time now.
Yeah.
Well, how can I get my kid? Is it too early to talk about racism? No, it's not.
No. Never too early.
Nope, because they experience it early, so you better talk about it early. But also, you've written it in a way that for just to be real clear, I'm an educator by trade, and special education was my specialty. I definitely know the standard a reading level is actually in the United States is actually 6th grade.
Yeah.
You know what? You've written it for the average person, but definitely school age kiddos can definitely benefit from it, any age range. But I'm grateful because putting history in a terminology that is relatable helps people make those connections. Because if they can't access the text, they're like, 10 score, 4 score, and 11 years ago. We don't even speak like that anymore.
Right.
So those older texts are really going to be more challenging to manage, and just dropping them in front of kids is not going to work. Especially, wanting to expand how we work with kids. We got to meet them where they're at. And so it's if you have some real new information, it's good to have the text in a way that is accessible, so they're not building the reading skill and trying to learn new facts. So I'm really excited for that, for your book. Again, we have some copies. We have 2 people already on here going to get their copy.
All right.
So, and they said thank you for sharing, and they're really, I think, grateful to hear your story. And I just want to also shout out our mutual friend, how we even are connected with Julia Torres. She is a librarian in Denver, Colorado. She holds it down for the Montbello campus out here, where she's working with students of color, Black kids, kids who may identify Latinx or Hispanic, Spanish-speaking, immigrant, and she really supports the Project Lit out here, which is a group where they have book talks and author chats all the time. And I'm so glad that she was able to connect us, because the curly girls across the nation need to hear what you have written and have access to your title as well. So if you had any last words, what would you say? Because you know what? You got to the point. I can't wait to share this. This is going to be exciting for me to have some really great clips about your book and highlight you. But what would you want to share with a young reader? So we've gone from what you wrote and how it went from an article to a book to just your struggle writing it, and now advice for writers. But what would you leave a young girlfriend, some general advice during just in existence, finding their passion and moving forward? What would you say to them?
The first thing I would say is to pace yourself. Everyone doesn't figure it out. I'm 31 now. Everyone doesn't figure it out as young as I did. Everyone's journey is different. People should pace themselves. They should figure out their passion no matter how long it takes. Everyone is on their own timeline. I think in I call it social media culture, we want everything to be microwaved. We want it quickly. We want to be immediately successful. We want to be an editor-in-chief overnight. We want to be a CEO overnight. That's not how life works. And when you skip parts of the journey, like I always say, if I had not started as an editorial assistant or an intern, there's no way I could be an effective editor-in-chief. Everyone has to start at the beginning, because when you skip steps, you end up missing key parts of the journey. So when you get to the destination like I have, or part of my destination like I have, there are things that you've missed out on because you were rushing. Take your time. Whatever it is that is meant for you in your life is going to materialize in the way that it's supposed to, in the time that it's supposed to. And there is no sense in rushing something that's going to happen anyway.
That's really powerful because we are in the, I need it now. I mean, I was guilty when I graduated from undergrad. I was like, I'm it.
That's
Where's
right.
my job?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, really not it. There's a lot of it's out here, and they've been doing it. So it's really, really valuable to hear that from you. And yes, you are young and have had an opportunity to really hone in your talent and skills. But it's not to deter folks from like you. We have some rock star, superstar folks out there, and with that talent, there's still the value of experience that is necessary. Now I'm like, man, I was probably really annoying to everybody because I just knew it.
Yeah, I know I was annoying at 21, 22. I thought I knew everything.
Look, we probably did, though. We just needed, to guide it a little different. But that fearlessness, I hope you don't lose, being able to really write about a demographic that typically has been looked over.
Yes.
Is really powerful, and we need you to stay in that. And I know it can probably seem discouraging, and I'm just grateful that you are holding it down for us.
Always. I do my work for Black women, always.
Thank you so much, and I am going to leave us with this last encouraging word. I like to say, stay curly, my friends. So thank you again, and we'll definitely follow up and highlight some of our book winners and follow up with some of our curl friends who have read your book and ask them for their contributions and perspective. How does it influence their work in the future, and just what they learned from the book too. So thank you again, and I will definitely be in touch. Have a good rest of your virtual curly weekend.
You too. Thank you so much.
Look. Thank you so much.